Hi, I'm Professor Shanky. Welcome to another tech tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create tables within a Microsoft Access database. So I'm going to start off with a blank database. And Microsoft by default will give me a table with one field in it. This is important to understand why, and that's because a database is used to store data. And how does it store data? Well, it stores it in fields. So if I did not have a table, I couldn't have fields, and without fields I can't have data. So to have a database, at minimum, we need at least one table with one field. And it's really not very useful to have a single field with a single table. So we want to be able to add multiple fields to a table so it can start to make sense. So I want to do a short demonstration and create a simple database for like an order or inventory tracking that will show us, the customer and products in an order that was created. So to do this, I'm going to need 4 different tables. So Microsoft gave me one table to begin with one field. I'm going to go ahead and work with what it gave me, and I'll show you how to add some fields and then modify what's there to meet our needs. So I have the ID field, and I'm going to go add a second field, and for this table it's going to be the customer table. So I want to add the first name and last name and things like that. So I'm going to click up here in the bar where it says click to add, and I'll be presented with a list of data types that I can choose from. Now it's very important that you choose the right data type. While you can use short text to hold numbers and dates and currency and things like that, it's not really a good idea. It's not very efficient, and you miss out on a lot of features. So we really want to think about the type of data we're storing and make sure we choose the appropriate data type. So in this case, I'm going to need to store the customer's first name and last name. And probably the best thing for me to choose would be the short text. That gives me up to 255 characters. That should be plenty long for most names. So I just click on short text, and then I'm able to edit the field name. You can see how field 1 is the default name it gave me. It's kind of highlighted. So I'm going to just go in there and type in first name. And I'm going to click to add here and short text. And I'm going to add last name and click to add. And I want to store the date that this customer first became our customer. I'm going to do that by choosing date time. So I could have done a short text, but I want to do a date time because I'll show you later on that there's some advanced features that we can do with date. So let's do date time, and we'll call that the create date. So now I have all of the tables that I'm going to need for my sample database, first name, last name, and a created date, and they have an ID. So I want to save it. And when I save it, it's going to ask me for the name of this table. So by default, it gave me table 1, but until I save it, it's not committed and it doesn't really exist. So I have to hit save, and I don't want it to be called table 1. I'm going to call this one customers. And I'll hit OK. And now I have the customers table. Now, let's say I was creating this and I accidentally chose the wrong data type. How do I change that? It's very simple. Up here, I just have to click on any of my fields. And if you notice, up here in the Table Tools Fields Formatting, I have the data type. So the data type tells me this is a date time. If I want to change it, I simply click on the drop down and I change it to short text or number or whatever you want. So I'm going to change this back to date time. And I have some other options here that are important I want to cover. And one of those is the format. So this specifies how the data is displayed. So how are dates displayed? How many decimal places are shown? So if I click on the drop down, it'll change depending upon what data type I've selected. So I have things such as a general date, or a long date, short dates, or if I just want time. But I just like general date. Next to that, I have a few more options that I can look at. I have required, unique, indexed, and validation. Required means that you must have that field or you can't save the record. So in other words, I can't have a customer without a create date. Unique means there could only be one of those for every record in your table. Indexed is used if you're going to often search by that field. So if you're going to do lots of queries based on zip codes for marketing research, you would probably want to put an index on your zip code field. Now, the more indexes you have, the bigger your database will be file-wise. So you need to make sure that you only index what needs to be indexed, but also make sure you use indexes so your database is efficient. Now, validation is another key feature of Microsoft Access that allows us to put some boundaries on what type of data can actually be entered. So I'm going to have keep create date highlighted, and I'm going to click on validation, and I can have rules and error messages. All right, so I'm going to create a field validation rule, which will restrict what type of data I can put in. And now I have the Microsoft Access Expression Builder, which is very helpful to quickly create these validation things. So if I click down here on expression elements and functions, there's built-in functions. I want to go to date time, and I want to say that the create date year is greater than 2017. So I can't have someone put back an older year. Now, the date, you'll see, has these double arrows around it. That means it's just a placeholder. I actually have to put the field in that I'm referring to. In this case, it's going to be square bracket and create date. So I know it's a little bit complex, a little bit more manual work than we're used to here, but this is going to say the year of my create date field greater than 2017. And I'll hit OK. And it just goes away. If you have an error, it's going to pop up with a message telling you what the error is. Now I'm going to go back to validation and do a field validation message. So this is an error message that would pop up if you put in something that's invalid. And I will say, you must put in a date greater than 2017. And to show you how that works, I'm going to come here to a new field, and I'm going to put my date in as 1/1/2016 and hit enter. And down here my message popped up, you must put in a date greater than 2017. It just won't accept it. So if I put in 2017, doesn't work. 2018, and it's fine, it accepts that. Let me go ahead and clear this record off. So to clear, I'm just going to put my arrow here in this first column, right click and delete record, and I'm okay with that. So I have my validation and my field validation message. So we also have record validation rules and messages. So fields are specific to that field, and record are specific to the entire record. With a field validation, it's going to try and run that validation rule immediately as soon as you change that field. And the record validation only compares it when you try and save the record. And the reason it exists, if you try to run a multiple field validation rule on a single field, you have room for error, especially if the user puts in one of the field values but hasn't gotten to the other fields yet. Your validation rule will most likely fail. So if you are doing validation rules that cover more than one field, you have to do the record. The creation is the same and the validation message is entered the same. It's just when does that rule run. So I'm going to go make a couple more changes real quick. So my first name, I want to make sure that's required. You must have it. Last name, must have that. And I'm going to also go ahead and require a create date. So I have to have all of these. So I'm going to switch over now to the design view. Now I like working in the design view. It's a little easier for me to see the actual fields themselves. The data set view allows you to see the data as well, which is kind of nice. But the design view to me is a lot easier to work with. And I could have done this from the beginning, but I wanted to show you that you can actually make changes either way. In the design view, I can see something different. And in this first column here, it is this little key symbol. Now, earlier we talked about keys. That key symbol is telling me that this is a primary key. Primary key just means that is our unique field. How do I know it's unique? So Microsoft has this data type called an auto number, which is an integer that automatically increments it. Generally it starts at 1 and goes all the way up. So however many records you have, each one added will just be one more than the previous record. So look down here, it's a long integer. The new value is increment. We could also do random numbers if you wanted to. Increment is great for employee IDs, things like that. But randomize would be used if you want to ensure at least some anonymity or uniqueness. What is the format of them? Again, this is the standard, general numbers fine. We can have captions. So captions are the label for the field when you're looking at it. By default, it's going to be the field name, but you can put a caption here. This is great when you're looking at the layout of like a report or a form. I can also click in here and change the field name. It's important that you get the field names correct the first time around. If you have a bunch of queries built and you change the field names, you could run the risk of breaking your queries. It's just good habit. Name them once, name them correctly, and go from there. So I don't want this to be ID. I want this to be customer ID. Why? ID, I understand that's an identifier, but I don't know what type of ID it is. So customer ID makes more sense for me. So first name. Down here, so remember we talked about a short text max of 255 characters. If you knew that maybe this was a username and they could only have 10 characters, I could come down here and change it to 10. That would restrict how much data is stored. Because it's a name, I don't know how long it'll be. I'm going to keep it 255. Just like the others, I can change the format. So one of the other things that's kind of important is the default value. By default, it's going to be blank, but if you wanted it to be a default, you could put in a default value. Probably not useful for first name or last name, but when we get to the date time, maybe I do want to put a default value in there. I have my validation rules. This is the same. If I click on here, I can build my validation rule and my validation text, which is my alert. Is it, is it required? Is it indexed? So maybe I, first name probably not, but last name, maybe I do want to index on last name. So let me go to the last name. I'm going to keep that at 255. I'm going to go ahead and index this. And duplicates are okay. I can have multiple last names in my table. And create date. So if you look down here, here's my validation rule that I created and my validation text. Default value, I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to go to built-in functions, date time, and now. And that'll put the current date in as a default date. I can also come up here and add some descriptions. So descriptions are full text sentences. It's useful to put these in so someone else and it'll also help remind you when you're looking back, what does this mean? So this will be the customer's unique ID, customer's first name. Now if you notice a shortcut here, I put in customer's first name. I hit tab and it took me the field name. I started typing. Because I didn't hit enter, if I hit the escape button on my keyboard, it'll undo that typing and take it back to what it was. That's how I did that quick. Customer's last name, I'm going to hit the down arrow this time, and a record was created. And go ahead and hit save. And now I've created my first table. I'm going to come back here to views, to datasheet view. And I have all these pound symbols here. That means this is not wide enough to show what's there. So I'm going to put my mouse up here and kind of drag to the right a little bit. And you'll see there's my create date, 6/7/2018 at 5:26 p.m. So it gave me that default date. So that's the basics, how to create a table. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos. I'm Professor Shanky, and I'll see you next time.